dear learners on the platform of MOOCs. I am Professor Nafis Ahmed Ansari from Department of Political Science of Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. Today we are going to discuss about the political executive. The people choose the political executive to serve a certain term in office. The topic of this presentation will be political science executive procedure. This will teach us about the executive branch, the role of executive in government, political executive functions, political executive examples, etc. Students studying political science and civics will find these notes useful in comprehending the idea of a political executive. When we try to understand the meaning of the executive, we find that the executive branch is one of the crucial branches of the government that is essential to its operations. It carries out the legislative assemblies or parliaments enacted laws and policies. It also carries out a number of government initiatives, programs, and plans. Some officials at various levels of the government handle daily decisions but do not hold ultimate authority on behalf of the people. The executive is the collective term for these employees. The term executive is used because they are responsible for carrying out government policy. Executives are those who, although without ultimate authority, make daily decisions on the behalf of the people. That is, these executives are not the representative of the peoples, but they are the ultimate persons who are taking the decisions, and decision is also on the behalf of the peoples, as if they are the representatives of the people. Being responsible for implementing government programs, he earned them the title of executive. One instance of collective executive body is the parliament. An executive body's member have equal authority and power, allowing for group decision making. Everyone bears joint responsibility for the choices they make. Overseeing a committee of ministers is the prime minister. For a predominant amount of time, the people choose political executives. They make important choices. Leaders in politics are included in this group. They have more power than the executive branch, which is permanent. On the other hand, permanent executives are tasked with a certain assignment for a set period and are therefore more powerful and initial and influential inside the political system. Those who hold permanent executive positions in the government are known as civil servants. This lecture will emphasize their respective contrasts and importance. It is the political executive that makes policy decisions. They go by the name of representatives as well. They make decisions about the state's framework and policies. Political officials choose particular things in their domains, including finance, education, and health. As such, they decide on all the significant political choices. The people have selected them. Despite their authority, they have no control over the permanent executive, which the president appoint for a specific term. One of the most important branches of the government is the executive branch, which a government cannot run without. It is in charge of implementing all laws and directives passed by the legislative assemblies or the parliament. It also executes many projects and programs run by the government. A few positions in political executive positions are governor, chief minister, IAS, IPS, IAFS, etc., to mention few. One characteristics of the political executives is that they are the duly elected representatives of the people. They are both the officials and de facto leaders of their nations. Through elections, the people of the nation grant them authority. They can only hold office for a set amount of time. 5 years, generally, it is been given to them in the office. They have to fight elections after once more after 5 years. The people hold them accountable. Public criticism of political executive decisions is possibility. They carry out the laws and policies passed by the country's permanent and are seen as extremely powerful. The executive continuously monitors the legislative branches as the permanent executive and political. What is distinctions or this when we try to distinguish the permanent executive from the political executive, we find that the political executive makes a decisions about the state's framework and policies. They go by the name of representatives as well. They make decisions about the state's framework and policies. Political officials choose particular things in their domains, including finance, education, and health. Such they decide on all the significant choices. Political leaders makes global and dominate policy decisions which they involve alternate tax structure and enacting minimum wages, labor and education laws. The public select them. Despite this influence, they do not have over the president's temporary appointees who make up the permanent executive. They are in charge of the way the government runs and policies adopted. To carry out the policies, the political executive makes decisions on behalf of people. Political leaders make global and domestic policy decisions which may involve altering tax structures or enacting minimum wages, labor and education laws. They are in charge of establishing their country's core principles of justice, equality, and liberty. Additionally, they choose the location of for highways, hospitals, and schools. The state's permanent executive is a crucial organ. They serve the political executive for set amount of time and support decisions making at the lower level. They are the first powerful individuals in the government. The guarantee of successful implementation of the policy decided upon the political executives. To be aware of what is happening in the department of other ministries, they act as a liaisons between their departments and political executives. To act as a bridge between their department and other ministers, permanent executives also promote effective communication inside their departments. It is evident from a comparison of the two that the permanent executives are more potent than political executive. They are the ones who decide everything in a nation. These individual holds various posts including governors, secretaries, ministers and department heads. For a predetermined amount of time, the people elect the political executive. They make important choices. Leaders in politics are included in this group. They have more power than the executive branch, which is permanent. This is so because the people elect the political leadership in a democracy. The people will always prevail. They have to answer to the public for every consequences of their choices. They can decide on the general framework and goals of policy after consulting with the permanent executive. Permanent executive is concerned, they have a set assignment for a set period. Those who hold permanent executive positions in the government are known as civil servants. The ruling party does not go away, they just stay in office. They support the political executive in their daily administrative duties and operate under their guidance. They have greater educational backgrounds and industry knowledge. For instance, the advisors to the finance ministry know more about the economics than the ministers does, but the final decision will come from the finance minister. Why is political executive branch is stronger? This is a very important area that is being discussed, and it is very important to know. The people will always prevail in a democracy. As the people who choose the ministers, they have the authority to represent the people's wishes. For this reason, ministers make the ultimate judgments and determine the general framework and goals around which the policy decision should be based. The institutions officially in charge of governing a political community or enforcing its legally binding choices make up the political executive. These institutions may be, or these institutions may not be the ones for formulate this decision. Over time, the executive's role, structure, and personality have changed significantly, and no one conceptual framework can fully capture all of these changes and their effect. However, there are certain obvious principles that we may focus our attention on. The presidential and the cabinet system are the two most common types of executive structures. Direct or indirect elections now serve as the source of executive power instead of inherited rights, cooperations, and application of force. The executive authority has a more secular legitimacy, reasonable standards of success, and public acceptance have replaced appeal to occult forces, divine origin, and traditions. Specialized structures are increasingly performing the primary duties of the modern political executive, which include representation and integration, leadership, deliberation and decision making, control and supervision of subordinate decision making, and enforcement organs. Ultimately, adopting and applying a standard operating procedures has institutionalized executive accountability and responsibility. The aforementioned generalization might hold for established, mature political systems, but by barely apply to newly formed countries undergoing significant change. Their political life still heavily relies on force, and the nomination, selection, and decision making process still lack legitimacy. The new countries are still characterized by a lack of sense of community, a low level of industrial development and modernization, and a disorganized party structure. Charisma and interpersonal relationship continue to be valued more highly than institutions and established procedures. Governmental roles and functions, as well as the corresponding structures, including the executive, are not clearly defined. Political parties frequently plays games without agreeing on ground rules. Executive leadership is unstable due to the prevailing factional strife. Form and substance differ in the new countries. While most have initiated formal written constitutions of the developed societies, especially with regard to the executive branch, they have not yet succeeded in giving these structures political roles and functions. The political leader who achieved power is known as the executive, with a very few exceptions. The executive structure is only a transient and adaptable apparatus that facilitate his rule. Only in a handful of developing societies, notable in Sri Lanka and India and some of the more stable democracies in Latin America, are executive structures and related jobs starting to distinguish themselves clearly. The Prime Minister, the Vice President, the President, the Council of Ministers leads the assess the President in makeup of the political executive. The President, the Vice President, and the Council of Ministers, which the Prime Minister leads and assists the President in make up the political executive. Head of state is concerned. This mean by means of a single transferable vote, members of electoral college selected by the members of the state legislative assemblies and both houses of parliament elect the president in accordance with the proportional representation system. Appropriate weighting is assigned to each vote in order to ensure uniformity across states within the same entity and parity between the states over all and the union. The president shall be an Indian national, at least 35 years of age, and eligible to hold the office of a member of Lok Sabha. He can run for office again after serving a 5-year term. As stipulated in Article 61 of the Constitution, his removal from the office must follow the specified process. He may tender his resignation from the office by writing to the President under his hand. According to the Constitution, the President can wield Union's executive power directly or through officers reporting to him. He also has ultimate authority over the Union's defense forces. The President may convene, prorogue, address, send message to the Parliament, dissolve the Lok Sabha, promulgate ordinances at any time, with the exceptions of when both houses of the Parliament are in session, recommend the introduction of financial and money bills, assent to bills, and in certain circumstances, pardon, reprieve, respite, or permit punishment or suspend sentences. He can take on all or any of the responsibilities of the state government at the state government in the event of or even that the constitutional apparatus fails. If the president determines that there is a grave emergency and that there is a threat to the security of India or any portion of its territory, whether from war, external attack, or armed insurgents, he may declare a state of emergency. The vice president, as far as concerned, using a single transfer vote and the proportional representation system, member of the electoral college, which consists of members of both houses of the parliament, elect the vice president. He must be an Indian citizen, at least 35 years of age, and qualified to run for the Rajya Sabha. He can run for the office again after serving a 5-year term. His departure from the office must follow the steps outlined in Article 67B. If the president unable to carry out his duties because his absence, illness, or any other reasons, the vice president serves as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha and presides over the body until a new president is elected, which will take place within 6 months. If a vacancy results from the president's death, resignation, removal, or other circumstances, he stops carrying out his duties as the Rajya Sabha chairman while doing this. Then there is a council of ministers. Council of ministers here, when we say the Prime Minister is in charge of the Council of Ministers, which assists and advises the President in carrying out his duties. The President appoints the Prime Minister, and upon the Prime Minister's recommendation, the other ministers. That is, the Prime Minister recommends the name of the ministers. On his recommendation only, the President appoints the ministers. The Lok Sabha holds the council of collectively accountable. The Prime Minister has a responsibility to inform the President of all the council of ministers' decision pertaining to the management of union matters as well as any related informations and legislative initiative. Members of the cabinet, minister of state independent charge, deputy ministers and the minister of state make up the council of ministers. Then there is a political executive importance is concerned. The political executives are crucial to the way of government runs. They make decisions about the state's framework and policies. They are in charge of how government runs and what his policies are. They carry out policies. The political executive makes decision on behalf of the people. The political executive makes decisions about both internal and external policy. Changes to the tax code, minimum wage, labor, business rules, and educational initiatives are the example of the domestic policies. Consequently, these are the crucial choices that will have a big influence on the economic and social advancement of a country in the future. The political executive establishes a country's core ideals, including justice, equality, and liberty. Additionally, they choose the locations for highways, hospitals, and schools. Now, by concluding all these, we can say that the permanent executive holds greater influence than their political counterparts. When compared to political executives, they are more powerful and accountable. Their political the political executives who is chosen by the electorate to serve a set term elects these individuals. They have no authority over the political executive which is chosen by the people to represent them in the government and get compensation from them. Permanent executives support their political executive in all choices pertaining to their policies. So, in that way, we can say that when we're talking about the executive, permanent executive, there is a number of the thing that is essential. That the political executive, it is the political executive which has the power and authority given by the people to make the choices of the policies the government has to carry out. These political executives are the people who are the legitimate body for every action that is initiated by the government. It is the political executives which decides about the economic structure of the government, is educational structure of the country, and about the overall development of the nations. They are in charge of establishing country's core principles in the form of justice, in the form of equality, in the form of liberty. So, in that circumstances, we can say that in the form of a parliamentary system of government, the functions of the political executive is very important. And the political executives are the peoples who actually take the initiative, who actually takes the all responsibilities in carrying on the institutional development of overall institutional development of the country. In the new countries that is established, there is some confusions which is there in the system, but the country which has properly been established, the country which has proper constitutional framework, the country which has number of the rules and regulation properly established, there the role of political executive becomes very important, because their political executive initiatives will give a maximum up to output to the nations to the minimum input they are putting forth. Particularly in developed countries like India, which is a developing countries, where the resources are very minimum and the demands is very high, it becomes the prime duty of the political executive to carry out those policies which is essential for the public, and that policy should be completed with the minimum resources utilized, and that is only when the political executive is having clearly in mind or having cordial relations with all the branches, including the permanent executives, and carry out the policies with full, firm decisions. Thank you.